On September 27 of 1822, Jean-Francois Champollion deciphered Egyptian hieroglyphics. For the first time in centuries, Egyptian civilization spoke for itself. Inscriptions and writings on stone and papyrus were not a mystery anymore. And Egyptology as science was founded on that day. The key to the decipherment was the famous Rosetta Stone, a unique artifact that fascinated scholars for a very long time. Before the Rosetta Stone, Egyptian history was a mixture of myth, legends, and fairy tales. Although discovered and acquired by the French, it now resides at the British Museum. Today, the British Museum houses more than 100,000 artifacts acquired, bought, and stolen from Egypt. Starting in 1801, when the British defeated the French in Egypt and seized monuments stolen by the French. One of the earliest artifacts to arrive at the British Museum was the famous Rosetta Stone. But if the Rosetta Stone is an Egyptian artifact, how did it end up being on display at the British Museum? And why the call for the return of the Rosetta Stone to Egypt is still unanswered today. I am Mohie, and this is Egyptology. In 1797, Napoleon led his famous campaign to Egypt as a chapter of the British-French imperial conflict. Fascinated by Egyptian history and pharaohs, Napoleon came not only to invade, but to study and learn. A scientific committee, Institute of Egypt, accompanied the campaign. Once settled in Egypt, they studied almost everything about the country and later published the famous 10 volumes description of Egypt. In 1799, the French troops were preparing for the Battle of Abu Qir. East of Alexandria in a town called Rashid or Rosetta, the orders were given to enhance and rebuild an ancient fort existed on site near the port, built by the Mamluk Sultan Al-Ashraf Qaitbay in the late 15th century AD. The fort rebuilding was the responsibility of a French lieutenant and engineer, Pierre-François Bouchard, who discovered the Rosetta Stone within the old fort walls. Although the stone is an ancient Egyptian monument, but the stone existed within the fortress as a part of the monument stone recycling process that was common in medieval Egypt. The stone was discovered in July of 1799, and it immediately attracted the attention of Bouchard. The find was reported to Bouchard Commander General Jacques-François Minot. Later, Minot sent the stone to the Institute of Egypt. The discovery was made public in September of 1799 in an article printed in the Courrier de l'Egypte, and quickly the stone became a subject of intensive studies worldwide after the French made several copies of it, and they made it available for everyone. The stone was written in two languages, the ancient Egyptian language and ancient Greek. The upper and middle section was in ancient Egyptian language in hieroglyphics and demotic, and the lower section was written in Greek, which was quickly translated and published. But hieroglyphics and demotic remained shrouded in mystery. The 21st of March of 1801 marked the end of the French campaign in Egypt, and by the 2nd of September, 10,000 French surrendered to the British forces on condition that they will be shipped to France on British ships. Soon after the surrender, the French refused to hand over their discovered artifact, claiming it's owned by the Institute of Egypt. The French ended up surrendering the stone to the British by French General Minot. Colonel Tompkins Hillgrove Turner escorted the stone to Britain, and later it was moved to the British Museum and remained there to this day. The British inscribed a statement on both sides of the stone, captured in Egypt by the British Army in 1801 on the left side and presented to King George III on the right side. The capture of the Rosetta Stone marked a cornerstone for British superiority during the British-French imperial conflict. But in September of 1822, the French replied by the decipherment of the Rosetta Stone by Champollion. And now, it's time for the most important question. Why is the stone still at the British Museum? Nowadays, antiquities fall under the international laws and organizations like UNESCO and shall be provided by an ownership document. For instance, and according to these laws, during the time of Muhammad Ali, the Ottoman Wali of Egypt, as he was open to the idea of modernizing the country. So, it was a golden opportunity for Europeans to seize as many Egyptian monuments as they could. And it happened with the approval of Muhammad Ali himself, who represented Egyptian authorities back at the time. Later, national laws of Egypt have been developed through time to protect Egyptian antiquities and also to stop dealing in it. It started with French archaeologist Auguste Mariette, first director of antiquities, who organized excavation work in Egypt and established the famous condition of sharing the finds with the Egyptian Antiquities Service. Egyptian laws kept developing until 1983, when antiquities dealing was banned in Egypt and excavation work shall be done in Egypt with no share of the find. The Rosetta Stone, alongside many Egyptian artifacts all over the world, does not match the criteria of modern-day antiquities laws. For instance, the Rosetta Stone was stolen by the French during an invasion of the country and later was stolen from the invaders by the British, with no involvement from the Egyptian side by any means. It is funny to know that the French asked the British to hand over the stone in the early 1950s, while celebrating the 150th anniversary of the discovery. Not only did the British refuse the French request, they also refused, through the years, several requests from the Egyptian government to return the stone to Egypt, defining the stone as world heritage, not a physical and intellectual property of Egypt. The return of the Rosetta Stone to Egypt is a fair cause demanded by all Egyptians. So in the end, support us to bring it home. Share this video and sign the petition launched to return it alongside the Dendera Zodiac at Louvre, which was taken from Egypt in similar circumstances. And finally, share your opinion and the Rosetta Stone story under hashtag BringItHome.